Welcome to this Diabetes Health Matters on Diabetes and Exercise. I'm joined by two guests for this event. Delighted to have Dr. Sam Botchey and also Leona Williams, who are highly expert in this field and are going to provide lots and lots of information. Welcome both.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. So I'm going to ask you to say a little bit about yourselves and how your professional work is related to diabetes and exercise. Just give us a brief info. Sam, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. My name's Sam Botchey. I'm a sport and exercise medicine doctor, specialised in sports and exercise medicine. Currently working in Oxford in the Oxford University Hospital Trust in the NHS there. And that work largely involves musculoskeletal medicine. So my day-to-day practice usually is seeing patients with referrals from GP practice and other places for different musculoskeletal problems and trying to work out the diagnostic issues with what's wrong with them. And we also do management therapies as well, such as ultrasound-guided injections and referring for shockwave, things like that. But a large part of our job is public health, and that's trying to keep the nation fit and healthy. And that's kind of the most important part of the job. And that includes doing projects, but also doing research. And I've been working with a group called Moving Medicine, and we've been releasing different bits of information on how healthcare practitioners can give information about physical activity to the public. And the most recent one we did was on diabetes, which is why I think it's really important to talk about diabetes today, but also talk about hard to reach communities and how the lack of information that they have is really important, because if we can get them more information, we can get them fitter and healthier.
Thanks very much, Sam. And we don't have any hard to reach communities because we just, as you know, and you do, we just reach out to communities and we can contact them. So thanks very much for that, Sam. Thank you. And Leona, you've had a really interesting journey towards your professional career now. Could you give us a bit more information about that?
Absolutely. So I work at Guy's and St Thomas's hospitals in the weight management services. I started in the physiotherapy, and over the last couple of years, I have had an interest in nutrition, and I now work in the weight management services in the community setting. Most recently, I've been working in a culturally tailored program called Up, and it's deliberately targeted for Black African and Black Caribbean communities. At the moment, it's just in Lewisham. And I deliver physical activity as well as nutrition in that Up program.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, both. It's really, really good to hear from you both. I'm really looking forward to it as well. So I'm going to ask you a question first of all. I'm going to go to Sam. Sam, is it exercise? Is it activity? Is it moving more? What should we call it? What do you think?
It's a fantastic question. I think what I like to call exercise is kind of targeted physical activity. So that's exercise for a specific purpose or a specific goal. Whereas physical activity can be anything, and I think that's what we should be calling it, because I think a lot of the time exercise has a stigma around it, and people fear exercise. Which honestly, we shouldn't fear the word exercise. Everyone should be able to do it, but I think when we're trying to get people to do more movement, we need to refer to it as physical activity. And I'm really passionate about actually improving the concept of physical activity amongst our people.
Fantastic. And Leona, the same question to you.
Couldn't agree more with what Sam's just said, actually. Physical activity, it's about moving, just moving more, sitting less. So I think absolutely, when I think of exercise, I do think of it as more intentional and targeted for those perhaps physical activity benefits. But as we know, and as we'll talk through today, those benefits can be affect our mental health as well. And actually, physical activity is everything. That could go from walking your dog, taking your children to school, doing the housework. It all counts. It's all important.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, both. So, physical activity, Sam, then, is it just about losing weight?
That's another great question. I think when people think about exercise, they think a lot of the time they think about the targeted programs for weight loss, but actually physical activity and weight loss doesn't marry well together, and actually weight loss is predominantly about diet rather than physical activity.
Because that's going to be a revelation to some people, that physical activity is not the thing that's going to help you to lose most weight. It's actually about what you're eating is going to help you to lose most weight. And you're like pumping up that weight loss by adding in the physical activity.
I just want to talk about the scale of the problem of physical activity. So adults are about 20% less active than they were in the past, and that's only predicted to increase. But physical activity is a significant issue. It causes or contributes to 1 in 6 deaths in the UK and about 40% of many long-term conditions, including type 2 diabetes. And it's got a really large cost to us as a nation. And you can see from looking at all the things that are important in terms of mortality and in the countries that we live in, physical activity is right up there. And I think we spoke about weight loss specifically, but actually weight isn't a really good marker for fitness. And looking actually, when we look at kind of what visceral fat for the same BMI, you can see that some people are actually a lot larger and will have a lot of subcutaneous fat, which is a fat around your tissues and that you can see. It's not as important as the fat that surrounds your organs, which you can't always see and doesn't necessarily mean you might be a large person. So I think it's really important that we delineate those two different things. You know, some people can be fat but fit, and I think that's one of the targeted things I always say to people. It's not just about weight loss. Physical activity is about your general health.
So can I ask you then, Sam, in terms of fitness, what does fitness actually mean? Is there a definition of fitness that you could share with us?
So I don't like to give specific definitions of fitness because I think it can be quite individual. I think it's also really important to know that you need to have a specific target to what you might be able to do for your life. You know, I think everyone should be able to, walk to their bus stop and walk up a few flights of stairs and walk around their house comfortably and not feel out of breath doing normal daily activities. I think that's a marker everyone should be happy with, regardless of their long-term condition, whether that be type 2 diabetes or something else. In medicine, we do have markers for specific fitness. We use something called the VO2 max, which is a method of looking at how much oxygen you consume when you're doing physical activity. But I think for in general, we need to look at an individual basis of what would you like to do without feeling short of breath.
Yeah. So I think that's a really important point, because this is something that we've drawn on in previous webinars as well, about this individual target. So the target for your physical activity is not necessarily going to be the same as somebody else's target for physical activity. Your physical activity target might actually be to move more than you're moving now. It might be to walk more than you're walking now. But what you're saying very clearly is it's not about comparing yourself to somebody else, but having that individual target, and that's what's important.
I also just wanted to just add on a piece of what you were discussing with Sam, really, about the benefits of physical activity and it actually the nutrition and diet having the most impact on weight loss. But I think where physical activity really comes into its own with weight management is weight loss maintenance. Sometimes we forget about that part, and people experience this yo-yoing with weight gain, weight loss, and actually, where physical activity comes in is helping to maintain that. Otherwise, I think people, they might still have a calorie deficit, for example, but the way our bodies react, maybe metabolism slows down, we experience more hunger. Actually, physical activity will just mean that we're using that energy. So in addition to the benefits that Sam discussed, weight loss maintenance. Yeah.
That's what the studies show as well, really interestingly, that maintenance is really important. Physical activity is really important for maintenance.
Which is a huge point, because that's one of the things that people really struggle with. You may have success, if I can call it that, in terms of weight loss, but maintaining that weight loss is really a challenge. So yeah, that's another plus point for physical activity. So Leona, what have you witnessed in your daily practice? Some people may go from no physical activity to actually being moderately or very physically active. What have you noticed?
So one of the first things actually I noticed that people see quite quickly after just a small increase in activity is an increase in energy. Now they might say, oh, I feel like I've had a head start on the day, if I wake up and do just a small amount of activity before my kids wake up, or I've again done some activity in the morning, I've walked to work and I feel much more alert, as I walk in or as I get to college, or perhaps, that afternoon meeting, I'm feeling much more focused. So that's seen quite quickly. Another one is improved mood. Again, just making that small amount of time to focus on something that might be different to what else you're dealing with in your day. Focus specifically on activity. It can have a really positive effect on mental health.
Okay, fantastic. And so as an individual, I am walking, let's say, average 7,000 steps a day. So I need to be saying I'm going to walk more, and by a certain time, I'm going to try and reach 8,000 steps a day. So I might say by a month's time, I'm going to try and reach 8,000 steps a day, and I'm going to monitor that on my phone, because that's where I check my steps, and that's the way it's going to look to somebody. The other thing I find helpful sometimes is a bit of friendly competition. So although we've said it's like an individual thing, in your WhatsApp group or one of your WhatsApp groups, if together you decide you're going to, try and push it a little bit, who's going to be walking the most out of that WhatsApp group? Or actually, now we can do face-to-face as well. If you're getting together and walking, that may be a way to motivate things. So let's get a bit more specific. So we're talking about diabetes, and we're talking about physical activity. Sam, I'm going to ask you, everybody living with diabetes, are they able to start physical activity?
So I think the important thing, this is probably the most important slide actually. Most people are able to do physical activity, but the why is really important. For people that have type 2 diabetes or have a risk of having type 2 diabetes, and we know that people in Black and African communities are specifically more at risk of type 2 diabetes, they can reduce their risk of getting diabetes and the risk associated with diabetes by up to 50%. Now, if I was to say any medication could reduce anything by 50%, I think everyone would take it. So if I could, package exercise in a bottle and hand it out, I'd be giving it out for free, because it's literally the miracle cure. And just a small amount of physical activity is really important. Now, I know a lot of people have concerns about starting physical activity, and because of that, there's been a lot of research recently about whether anyone can do physical activity. And you're not going to be surprised by my answer, but anyone can do an increased amount of physical activity. The research has shown even for people with long-term health conditions such as cardiac problems or kidney problems, the benefits far outweigh the risks. And the risk of these adverse events that people worry about that stop them doing the physical activity is actually very low. And I know people don't feel like that, but that's what the science has shown. So really important to get that message across that everyone can do physical activity. And although we're saying it here, it's not just as easy as telling someone to move more. We need to be aware about individual concerns and address them when people have them. But it's really about supporting them so that they know that everyone has their own starting point and people can get on and do physical activity if they need to. Now, when should we think about that? It's only really if you're having significant symptoms, doing a small amount of physical activity. That's when you need to seek medical advice. Other than that, I think everyone who's watching this can get out and do more physical activity. You can walk up the stairs more. You can, just do some more movement that might benefit you.
So Sam, can I ask you, and to Leonie as well? So for me, somebody sitting in a consulting room with me wants to start being more physically active. I think a good starting point is, where are you now? What are you doing? Yeah. So for somebody, Leonie, you mentioned walking the dog. I mentioned walking. Sam, we've talked about other forms of physical activity. But I think you can build on what you're doing now. And even if you're not doing any physical activity, even if sitting is what you're doing, you can be more physically active sitting. Is that right, Leona? What could you do?
Absolutely, absolutely. There are lots of seated exercise that you can do. You can march on the spot and get your heart rate up. You can move, can do strengthening, body weight strengthening exercises. Just straightening your leg. Hold that for 10 seconds. Repeat that 10 times. You'll soon start to feel the muscles in your legs working really hard. So you're absolutely right. You can, from wherever you're at now, you can build on that gradually.
So people have a lot of screen time, whether that's TV, whether that's gaming, whatever. Yeah. So you're saying, whilst you're doing that, you still can be physically active. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Move your arms if you can, your legs if you can, lift them, hold them for 10 seconds. That's physical activity. Because Leona, when you talk about lifting weights, people may think they've got to go to the gym.
No, absolutely not. No, I mean, you can reach into your cupboard and grab a tin of beans. You can, you don't have to have specialist equipment or wear, specific clothes.
What people are watching the screen now, what could they be doing? So getting a tin of beans.
You could be grabbing a tin of beans. You could be moving your ankles, pumping your ankles to get your calves working. We, talk about core strength and how that important, that is. How are you sitting in your chair right now? Are you leaning back, slumped into your chair? Could you sit up and really engage your core, drawing in your belly button, pull your
Just saw me and Joan both suddenly improve our posture.
You saw that, yes. We sat up straight.
And that's where it all starts. Yeah, core strength is really, really important. And, if you've been inactive for a long time, you might not have realized how your posture has changed. But that's a really good place to start, especially if you're sitting for long periods of time in the day. Things that we might experience, like back pain, for example, that can build over time. And actually those small changes in just how you're sitting at your desk and what's your alignment like? Where's your screen? Where's, how high is your desk and things like that? Can make a big difference, and it's a great place to start.